Good day. This is Cappy from Always in Stitches in Noblesville, Indiana, and we are so excited. We're bringing you another in our series of the Block of the Month Color Collage. And if you're in our shop taking this class, then you've already seen me on Saturday show you how to do this. But I know some of you come back afterwards and go, what did she say? What does that mean? So that's why we provide this video tutorial to help those people in our class. And even if you're not in our class, if you're doing this Block of the Month with another quilt shop, or maybe you ordered it online and you don't have access to a classroom setting, we're going to offer you the opportunity to find out some information about how to make this block. You will need to have the pattern book. I'm not going to give you dimensions on anything. I'm just going to tell you how to do the process of sewing the blocks together. So we are on block 2, which is Sewing Seeds is the name of the block, and it looks like this. I think it's a cool block. There's a lot of details to this. If you watched my first video, I talked about how to press seeds, it's because it's seeds, it's sewing seeds, how to press seams to the left or the right or open. And in this block, it was kind of fortuitous that I talked about that because she has you press some seams open. And so I think it validates what I talked to you about the fact that sometimes if you're used to a press them open kind of person, the reason she has you do in one direction or another is you'll see in this block it's really kind of important. And then there's one seam she even has you still press open for that very reason. So anyway, that discussion can cause a lot of debate, but my point is proven in this particular block. And it's a fun block to make. You know, you've got half square triangles, which makes up every block. You've got a square in a square here. And then these, I don't know what she's calling these. I don't know that there's a, I don't know. Doesn't say what this is called, but these two pieces here make this chevron. It's a really cool block to make. It's fun to get those points to match. Not difficult, just you have to be specific about it. So I'm excited about showing you how to make this. So let's dig in. If you talked to me before, you know I have my box of colors here. We're working with just the specific colors that she asked for. This time it's the blue ground cover, the whoops, telling you wrong. It's the blue quarter framing, which is this fabric, the lime dappled, which is this little green fabric, the yellow seeds, which was one we haven't worked with yet. These little seeds and the blue seeds. We work with both of these, which I thought was really a fun piece of fabric. And then fern is this solid green that you see in here. That fern, this is the only block you use this in. So if you think, gosh, I got the whole thing and I only have a fat quarter, I think is all you have, that's all you need. It's plenty because you won't use this again. But it's interesting because that color comes up quite often, but this is the only time you get to use it. So don't be scared. If that's all you have, it's okay. Don't get panicked because what you use now, you're done with it. I am going to tell you that when you cut it out, there's a dimension for the B squares, which the B squares are going to be sewn together as half square triangles. And she gives you one of those 3/8, 5/8, 7/8, you know, those dimensions that are just killer. When you make a half square triangle, I like to have as much space left over to be able to square it up. And when you cut it right on the 3/8, 5/8, 7/8 dimension, it generally means that you're going to have not a whole lot to square up when you square that block up. So I would suggest on all of the strips that you are supposed to cut that are for the B squares, which is going to be your lime dappled, your yellow seeds, and your blue seeds, and your fern solid, you cut strips for the B squares. Go up to the next half. It's actually half. It's a 3/8 measurement. I want you to go up to the half dimension. You'll be happier. And I'm going to sew some pieces together here so you can see what I'm talking about. I've cut these rather than the 3/8 dimension. I've cut them to the full half. And that gives me a little more space to work with. So I'm going to sew these together, and we've got a new toy. We have a camera now that we can get really, really close to my sewing on the sewing machine. And I'm really hoping that that helps you be able to see this process a little more effectively of how I sew half square triangles. We've talked about it quite a bit, but we've got some tape that really makes that cool and makes it a fun project to do instead of drawing all the lines. Because if you're used to, and the directions tell you to take a pin and draw a line and then sew a 1/4 of an inch either direction, I got a trick for you. Let me show you what to do. So I'm at my new little hi. Hello. Peter's in the room. We have a new tool, so be patient with us. So I'm at my sewing machine, and there's several things I want you to notice with what I'm doing right here. First of all, I have a choice on feet. I have this 1/4 inch foot, which if you look at it, you can see it right there. It has a little guide on the side of it, right here, that sticks down. It sticks out. And if I'm trying to um, work with, let me make it full screen. Make it full screen. Okay, if we're playing with our thing. I just made it full screen so I can see what I'm doing. So if I'm trying to sew a quarter square triangle, this piece of fabric will catch on that guide. Okay, so I have taken this foot off of my machine. Normally I'm going to stitch with that. There's several feet available for my sewing machine, but I want to teach you a little bit about all the different feet you have with your sewing machine that you maybe don't use. And so this is my 1/4 inch guide foot. I also have to set my machine to a different setting. So if you looked, my needle is right square in the center, but when I choose the 1/4 inch piecing stitch, the needle moves over. That means I also have to move my seam tape, this 1/4 inch seam tape that I'm in love with. If you don't have some of this, get some. I know some of you that are watching us have bought some of this stuff. This is phenomenal, but you have to place it where the needle drops. And so I checked my distance. You can see right there, I put my ruler on it. When I drop my needle down, it lands right on that side of that uh, ruler, and then I'm in a 1/4 of an inch. So I've tested that to be sure I'm in the right spot. But that meant I had to move my tape, because if my tape had been in the place where I normally stitch, see, then it's not where it needs to be. So play with your machine, get comfortable with the positioning of your needle, and realize that the positioning of your needle can make a big difference on getting a scant 1/4 or a full 1/4. Okay. And use the right foot. You've got more than one foot to use, choose the right one. When I make half square triangles, I don't have to put a line down the center because I have this tape. And now what I can do is take my two pieces that go together and I can line it up with my fabric on the tape down here. There's a spot right down here. That's the 1/4 inch line off of the center red line, which the red line is actually where I stitch. This is a 1/4 inch to the left. This is a 1/4 inch to the right. So if I put the point of my um, 1/4 square triangle right there and put the other point on the 1/4 inch up here, then I can sew and I don't have to draw a line. And I can chain piece these together. So I'm going to do this so you can see how it works. And it's pretty slick because it saves me having to do a step. And I'm always about saving having to do a step. So there you go. Now, when I talk about chain piecing, what that means is I have all my pieces lined up, ready to go, and I just stop and put one in every time. So here we go. I'll put another one in. And I can just, now I don't use a foot pedal. I use a stop start button. So you can't see my thumb, but my thumb's up here turning the button off and on. And I'm just going to chain piece these together. And this is again why I want that extra space when I sew them or when I cut them. If this isn't exactly perfect, when I square it up, it's going to make it look great. And I love it piecing together perfectly, and squaring it up solves that problem. So I'm going to do a whole chain of these. I think gosh, you make a lot of half square triangles in this particular block. And I'm going to chain piece those. I'm just going to do them again and again. So I did one side. Now you can see I did one side, but I have to do the other side now. So here we go. I just put the point again on the line. So I got it on the line down here, right there. It's just at the edge of the picture right there. And in we go. Now, again, I've oversized these. The actual pattern called for a 3/8 inch increment. I went on up to a half because I know I want to have enough space to square these up and come out with the right dimension. I'm also, my piecing, my machine automatically sets it. It's at 1.80 for the stitch length. And that's a good stitch length because it means when I cut these apart, because I have not stopped and started at the beginning of each block, it's tight enough stitch that it's not going to pull apart. If you do a bigger stitch than that, you run the risk of your seams opening, and then you have all these little spaces at the end of your blocks, which is not happy. It's not a good day. Because then they pull apart. And then it's a mess. Just don't do it. just just trust me, make your stitch length fairly short. Okay, so this is just 4, but that's made 8 half square triangles. Four of them made 8. It's a lot quicker that way. And then I have this wonderful tool, which I'm going to show you right here, and I love this. I just run that down. If you don't have one of these, you want one. Run it down. Da-da-da. Isn't that cool? And that's, oops, there we go. That's how I cut all these. Okay, now we're going to go back to the cutting table. Okay, we're back at our cutting table, and I have those 4 half square triangle or 4 squares that I sewed together, and I'm going to cut down the center. Now, I commented to Peter because he's still here with me. Say hi, Peter, because
hey, everybody.
He's here. The tension is a little off on my machine because this machine had been carried around and the tension dial had gotten twisted. So my stitches are not really nice and smooth, but they'll be fine for what we're trying to do here. But just if you look at those tension and you go, oh my gosh, your tension's screwed up. You're right. I have a class. We can learn how to fix that. But I'm going to take and cut now down the center of each of these squares. And now I have half square triangles. And we're going to trim them up. We're going to press them. And she tells you to press these to the dark side, which is the fern, in this particular set. There's another set that you do that end up in this piece. So you sew together the blue dots to the, this is called, which one's this called? Lime dappled. When you sew these two together, you press to the blue, not the green, and with these you're going to press to the green, okay? So let me show you how we press these flat to the side. Let's go over here to the ironing board. Well, the ironing mat. So if you have a little wool mat, these are great. I love them. I love that they'll transfer and travel. But the thing about pressing is, you want to set your seam first when you're pressing to one side. And then I'm going to open that up. Now this is a bias cut of the fabric, which means it's super stretchy. So I want to be careful not to tug on it too much, not to pull on it too much. I really kind of just want to fold that over and then press it down. Okay? Because if I tug and push on that, I'm going to get it distorted. And then I'll come back from the other side, and I'm being very gentle at this point, and I'm just kind of pushing that back. I'm going to hold it for just a hot minute. A hot minute, get its iron. I tell you what, it's funny. Okay, so there I have my triangle, my half square triangle now. And there's a little bit of a fold in there. And so if you do a scant quarter on these, it's not going to be a bad thing. But I'm going to press all these to the dark side. And typically when you're making any quilt and you're pressing to one side or the other, if you press to the dark side, it almost always works out that everybody nests into everybody else, okay? And that's what we want. So there we go. So I'm going to press all these out. I'm going to press just about 4 of them just so you can get a sense of what that's about. And being careful not to stretch them, okay? But now they're too big because, remember, I had you go a little bit bigger. Had I stayed at the 3/8 inch measurement, these are almost exactly the size that I need. And that's why it makes me nervous. I like to square them up just to scooch, just to be sure they're square. Every time you sew one piece to the next piece, you want to be sure they're both exactly the dimension they should be. That saves you trouble later. All right, so you see how I press these out, and then I go back over to my cutting table. So let's travel, 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 travel. Okay, and I come to my cutting mat, and there's a diagonal on this ruler. That diagonal lands on my diagonal, and I can now cut this down to the size that I need it to be. And I keep this diagonal right across that line, okay? So it goes across the half square triangle. And then I square it up. And this is why I love my rotating mat. Because all I have to do is just turn. I turn again. And I'm going to square that up. And this is the step that will make every single block you make come out perfect. See how perfect that is? Now, because I oversized it a little bit, I have a little to trim off. If I hadn't added that extra 1/8 of an inch, I would probably not have much to trim off of there. But you see how I went from that to this, and how this is much more accurate. Exactly what I need. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew. We're going to make half square triangles. You make this half square triangle, the lime dappled to the blue dot, and you make this green to the yellow. And I sew those together, just like that shows. These to this. Now what's nice about it is because these are pressed in opposite directions, this is pressed to the blue, that is pressed to the green. When I put those two blocks on top of each other, they nest. They just kind of, one connects in with the other, just like this. And it makes this nice little snug knot, and that makes that point right there absolutely perfect. And so when I sew down this seam, it also makes this exactly 1/4 of an inch. So this is why I'm a big proponent of pressing to one side or the other. I think I get tighter points. Some people can press open and get bigger points. But what I'm going to do is sew the lime to the yellow to the blue, and the yellow to the green. And then you sew those units together. So I end up with these two and these two. A whole stack of each. Because you're going to be making this corner piece, which are these put together, just like this geometry gets me confused sometimes. That to that makes that block. So let's sew some of these together so you can see how that works. Okay, I'm back at my machine now. I'm ready to start sewing where I've taken my half square triangles and sewn them to each other. Now I'm ready to sew those together and make a little square. I still have this foot on because I was doing half square triangles. I'm done with half square triangles. So I'm going to take that foot off, and I'm going to put my 1/4 inch foot on, because I'm going to be sewing 1/4 inch seams square on, and I don't have to worry about getting around that point. So now, in the directions, she has you press one way and the other way. And here's why. It's what I was talking about. Look how these nest together. Let me trim those little fuzzies up because they're blocking your view. I have these little, okay, we sell these itty bitty scissors. Are those the littlest scissors you ever saw in your life? I couldn't find my zinger scissors, so I grabbed these. And I actually kind of like them. They're good. Okay, so now that the fuzzies are gone, you can see. See how those two pieces nest together just like that? Boom. Dead on. And look how it matches there and it matches there. Now, I know we've got people who are big pinners, and I understand that. But because these nest, I kind of don't have to pin. It's gonna work. And this one nests from here to there. See how they're going opposite directions? One's facing that way and one's facing that way. So now these two also nest together. Same thing's going on here if I'd had one, but this one's just flat, so I don't have to worry about it. So now I'm going to start sewing from here because that's a flat, and I kind of like that side better. And I probably really should pin. I know, there's those pinners, but I'm not a pinner. Sorry for those of you who are. But if you're a beginner, pinning right here is probably not a bad idea. We did a whole thing about pins. So again, I'm going to chain piece. I will have all these in a little stack, like right here. one on the one side, one on the other, so I make sure I get them right. I have those sitting right by my sewing machine. There's a camera there now, so I can't, but I'll have these set together, and I'm just going to pick them up and I'm going to feed them through. So here we go. Let's see what we get. And I can feel when I get to where the needle is just about to meet those two, I can feel that that is still nested together. It's the best feeling to know it's going to be right on. Okay. And then I take my next one, do the same thing, lay it on top of each other. I'm checking those nests are where they need to be. That one's nested into that one. This one's nested into that one. See how that's nested into each other? I'll flip that over. And I'm going to line that up. Now, because my pieces are all the right size, everybody matches. If you're starting to sew two pieces together and the two pieces don't match, stop and find out why, because something's wrong. Typically, if you're sewing things together in the way that they were set up, the way that they've been measured to fit each other, if they don't fit, something's not right. Go stop and take the time to figure it out, because you'll thank yourself later. All right, here we go. I'm matching my see the nest. I don't know. I realize the press open theory. I get it. But this is the way I learned to quilt, was to nest my seams, and I just think you get a sweeter connection. I don't know. We're going to do a block here in a minute that you're going to see her do it open, and it makes sense there. Sweet. I suppose if you pin, it might go a little quicker, but I'm not about doing this fast. You know what? I'm trying to, I'm not in a rush. I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing it for my pleasure. And so, speed is not an issue for me. Now, there are people who do this professionally, and man, they got to get it done to get it done. And I get that. But for me, my cat's usually hanging around on the ironing board table watching me, and he didn't want me to hurry because he can't come in that room unless I'm in there. So he likes me to take my time. Okay, so I would chain piece the whole set of these and do them for all 4 blocks, because you make the same block 4 times. And I'd have a big long chain of these is what I would have. And that's how I would know, where I'm at as far as how many I've made. So there's a big long chain. I'm going to use my little tool here again, and I'm going to cut these in half. But this is the best little tool. I love this thing. Okay. And now I'm ready to press open. Okay, here we are at our pressing mat again, our little wool pressing mat. Small. My machine is set up so I've got a pressing mat, I've got a cutting mat. I'm kind of in a horseshoe shape, and I'm doing things quickly. So I'm going to set the seam just to kind of make sure everybody's flat. I'm going to have to work on the tension on this machine, but that's another story. When I open this up, I just want you to take a peek. Look at that point. She is dead on, baby. And this point here, same thing, because those seams nested. They're just happy little seams.
Did you have to pin?
Did not have to pin. I know, don't tell anybody. Okay, so now on this one, she doesn't really give you much direction on how to open this seam up, but let me show you my favorite part. See this little swirl I get right there? When you press to the side like that, it means that this could be a very bulky connection. But when you flatten these out, first of all, is that not the cutest little corner in the world? I love these. There's 4 of them if you look at the whole block. 1, 2, 3, 4. What it does is it spins the way that these lay, which they naturally lay like that anyway, but it opens that seam up so there's not too much bulk right there, okay? And in order to do that, I have to take a couple of little stitches here. So I sewed it together like this, and there's a couple seams right there and a couple seams right here, stitches, that I have to take out. So I take my little seam ripper, that's what that's called. I had a brain fade for a minute there. And I pull that stitch out. And I do the same thing on the other side. pull that stitch out. Okay. Excuse me. And now, look what happens. You just pull them apart. What? Just like that. And there's my little flattened seam. Is that not the most beautiful thing you ever saw?
I love it.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite part of the whole quilting. Nobody but the quilter who pieced it will ever see these. But when I look at the back of my quilt and I see all these little mini blocks, it just makes my heart sing. I love it. And now when I press this, the others will naturally go to the side they're supposed to go to. And that just is flat as it can be. It's super, super flat. And even though, oops, there we go. I flipped that one over. These pieces have some layers to them. They kind of lay all in the right direction, but those all smushed together would make a definite knot. And you don't want that. Now, as I said, once the piece is quilted and put together, nobody's going to know these are here but you. But isn't it kind of nice to know that inside your quilt there's this little secret, little squares that only you know are there. Maybe your quilter. And look how flat that lays. That's a beautiful little square right there. It's a pretty little square. And Bob Ross, wasn't he the painter guy? It's a pretty little tree. This is a pretty little square. But the best little part is that little square right there in the back. So I'm going to do that with all 4 of these, okay? I'm going to take each one of them. I'm going to pull these little threads out. And it's just a couple tugs. It's really not hard to take them out. And you have to do it on the other side. It's not the same seam. It's 2 different seams. Pull those little stitches out. And they just slide right out. And then I set her down. And I just do, what? It just makes me happy. I taught Peter to do this, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember. It was
one of those little moments. He was like, oh, that's so cool. And it is cool. If you press open, you don't get that little treat.
Secret.
It's a secret. Isn't that fun? It's like a little quilt in a quilt. I love it.
A pinwheel.
It's a pinwheel.
It's a micro pinwheel.
It's a micro pinwheel, yeah. Yeah. And again, just look how those points are adding up. You can't complain about that one whit. All right, let's go see where our next part is in this. So travel, 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 travel over here. So these go on your corners. You make four blocks. So 4 times 4, you're going to make 16 of those. These all go in this corner. So there's 4 in each block. Times 4, 16. So you're going to make 16 of these little wings. And then you have to make this centerpiece right here that goes between those 2. Now that is made, and the instructions show you, it is made by sewing wings. So this is, and if you're even the littlest bit dyslexic, this is going to be confusing. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to be confusing. So I have my piece here, and then I have these pieces that I want to go this way. Let's just do it this way so you can see. I want one going this way and one going the other way. One going the other way. So they make that V. Okay, and I think this is confusing. The instructions are pretty good. She tells you to make one direction, or to make the first set one direction and the next set the other direction. And then this one has to go like this. Okay, and this one goes like this. And even though visually you think, oh, it's just one turn one side, one turn the other, it's actually not. If you look at these 2 side by side, they're at opposite ends, but you can't flip it around. It just won't work. Like, that's the way it's made. So you have to make 16 this way and 16 that way, okay? And the way that we make that particular block, and this is a fun block to make, but I'm going to tell you there's a trick to it. Because where I told you didn't have to draw a line on a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 square triangle, you do have to draw a line on this one. And I've not found another way to do it to make it work. So what I have to do on my pieces that go the two opposites, I need to draw diagonal lines. And then what I'll do is I'll cut all my pieces out, and then I just sit and draw the diagonal lines on these. And because I'm on the back of the fabric and I know it's not going to show after I sew it, I will use a friction pin. If this would exist after I sewed it, I would not use a friction pin because they tend to take the color out of fabric. So because this will be sewn on and you'll never see it again, I can use this pin on the back side. So just so you can think about this again, I'm going to sew this one on to go this way, this one on to go that way. The opposite's going to be true on this one. I have to sew it on to go this way and this way. So you see how they're different but the same? It's very confusing, I think. And my brain took, oops, see I did that one wrong. This way. It took a minute for me to figure it out. So make 16 like this, and then when you make the next 16, make sure you're making them the opposite. But let me show you how to sew this. So let's go back to the sewing machines so you can see up close how to sew these lines and have this come out like you want it to. There. And then once you put the file name in, it starts recording. Okay. I didn't know that. Just figured it out. Okay. So here I am again. I've got my 1/4-inch foot on. Right there with the guide on it. That's not going to work to sew these because see how it would get caught? So I'm going to change my foot out. Go back to just my flat foot. Now, right now, I'm set with the needle coming in on this side. I really don't want it there because I was set for that foot for the 1/4-inch piecing and my tape's in the wrong place. So I'm going to go back to a regular stitch. That means I got to move my tape, which is fine. That's why the tape comes up and down. And I'm going to put that tape back on right where I think it goes. And I'm going to put my ruler in here. And we're going to test it. She needs to go a little to the left. Oops. This is hard to do when you got a camera. It's better than it was. We were trying to get up close on this camera, and we knew you guys were wanting to see up close, and so we've got a new piece of equipment. She's over just a little bit. There we go. I think we got her. Yep, dead on. Okay. See, my needle's there, and this is running right along that. So that's exactly what we want. So now, what I'm going to do, and I adjusted my tension. By the way, I was telling you I was having tension problems. The bobbin was in backwards. Wonder I did that. Okay, so I put the points together on this so that my point is laying right on the point. And same goes, the point just lays right here because my pieces are cut to exactly the size the pattern says. Unlike the half square triangles where I could make it a little bigger and trim it, I have to cut these pieces exactly the way the pattern tells me. And I have my line, and I'm going to sew just a thread's width towards the outside corner when I sew. I'm not going to be exactly on the line. I'm going to be just a thread's width over. And it's like the side of my needle is running along the side of my line. And the reason I need to do that is when I fold that over, if I sew right on the line, then what's left will be just a thread's width short, and it just doesn't work. I'm going to slow this down a little bit because I want to be sure I sew right where I'm supposed to. Okay. And then I'm going to chain piece those two. I would set up several of these and cut them and do like row after row after row, sew that end on. But I'm going to stop at this point just so I can do both ends for you. And now here's the part. This is kind of important. When I get ready to sew the next one on, they go the same direction. These angles are the same. That'll help you be sure you get it right. And again, I put my point on my point, and I put my point on my point over here. And then if it's been measured right, this lays on the side just like it's supposed to. All right. And now we go back in, and I'm using this seam tape to be sure my 1/4 inch or my stitch line is right on that line when I'm sending it through. just to the, just a hair off. Oops, nope, look what I did, it jumped up. And you know how I could have solved that if I had my straight stitch plate on here, but I don't. But that's all right, we'll make it work. You want those points, they're super important on this particular block. There we go. Oh my gosh, she's still doing it. I bunched it up and now it doesn't want to unbunch. I got to remember to bring my stylus. If I had my stylus, I wouldn't have this problem because I could keep her moving. All right, we're going to have to trim that out. Edit. It's created a knot, that's what it's done, and now it's catching. This is very shreddy fabric. There we go.
Scrap. Would it help for like a beginner?
It might, but it's because there's not a single whole plate.
Well, it might.
Let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. Let me show them a trick. Okay, here we go. This will be perfect. Okay, so I started on the point. Let me show you how to do it to not start on the point. If I start on this edge, I've got a leader back there. Looky there. I knew that. I forgot. There's a leader. Like if I start here instead of out here, then I'm not pushing that point in and I won't get that mess up that you just saw. Or that he edited out, maybe. If he remembered, yeah. Okay. There's a lot going on in this block. And I will say, when this block came up, I was kind of like, oh man, they're really kind of, bringing them to the next level. So when I fold these back, I've done it right, then I should have a little bit left on each side. See there? And there. Now that one I'm not real thrilled with. I got too far in. Looks like, because I've got too much showing here. I'll probably rip that one out and have to do it again. See what I'm talking about? See how that when you fold it over, see how there's almost 1/8 of an inch showing there. So we're going to rip that one and do it again. And it isn't. Look, I'm right on the line. That's why it didn't work. Because I'm right on the line instead of to one side or the other. This one, look, I can see my line. I can see where I drew my line. This one, I can't see where I drew my line.
When you say one thread's width?
This one thread's width away is all it takes. But do you see what a difference it made on the way that piece sewed in? So we're going to do that one again. This is why you have all the time in the world to watch the video. And I'm going to start from there, not the corner. All right. Not the point. There we go. Start sewing from the side, not the point. All right, that should give me the right size now. So I'm going to make 16 going one way and 16 going the other way. Now we're going to get a better shape. Yeah, there we go. See how that comes out like it should now? So there you go. Now we're happier with that. But that's why I really wanted you to see how that works, because if you sew right on that line that you drew, you're going to end up with the wrong shape every time. Okay? We've got to make another one so we can sew them together, and then we'll have 2 to sew to each other. To make sure it's going to be okay. There we go. Okay. Then we'll do this again and we'll have it all in the recording, and then you can edit what you want out. All right, so when I sew on the other side of the line, it's not that side. It's not towards where the block's going to keep. It's towards the point that I'm going to cut off. That's the part that you want to sew inside that line. Yeah, it's just a thread's width. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's just a thread's width. And then these go the same direction. I have to stop and think about it. Be sure you lift this up.
Do you always fold it over and peek? I do that.
Yeah.
I sew it.
Yeah.
I have to fold it over and peek.
It's a good idea. Yeah, Peter said fold it over and peek.
Compare and look and make sure, and then I usually do that twice, and then I'm good to sew.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
It's gonna fall the right way.
Yep, that's the way. So I want to sew on this side of the line. And this is a cool block. I really like this block. It's another thing that's going to help that is to get that thread back. It's a pretty block when you get it done. Okay, there we go. There we go. Yep, see, point to point, point to point. We're good. So now we're going to go to the presser. The iron. Well, actually, I'm going to cut them first, and then I'm going to press them. So let's go look at the cutting table. Here we go. So I have my pieces that I've sewn together at the diagonal, just as I was told in the directions. And I'm going to have this when I'm done, but I have to cut my wings off here. So I have this little ruler, and I just come in 1/4 inch, cut them off, making sure not to cut anything you don't want to cut. And the dimensions of this is really not, I mean, you could cut it tighter if you wanted to, but it's just, we're making 1/4 inch after the fact. And then you end up with this funny looking little diamond sort of thing. There we go. Now, somebody's going to save those and make something. Not me. Not me. Peter, you save them, right?
I do.
Do you really?
You caught me, yes.
Do you really?
Yeah, because I know they can make something.
Oh my gosh, you cracked me up. Okay, let's go over and let's
I've been under
press
the influence.
these. You have been under the influence. So this is the same thing. She has a diagram that shows you which way to press them. One time you press them towards the green part, the other time you press them away from the green part, because they've got to nest together. Same thing. So see, some are going this way, some are going that way. All right, so be sure you know which way do you do what. That sounds profound, doesn't it? Which way do you do what? So this one's going like this. I saw a little note that somebody said when they have to choose to know, to be sure they go the right direction, they'll put a pin pointing in the direction that they want to. I don't have a pin, all right, show you.
We just did a whole episode on pins.
I know, I did a whole thing about pins.
You would literally have a pin with a letter.
I know, I do. We have a letter. We have all kinds of pins. Here's some pins. I kind of have to pack my sewing room and bring what little bit I need to do that. Okay, so in this case, I want to sew that way. So I'm going to point my pin in that direction. So see, it's pointing that way. This one, I want to point in that way. So I'm going to point my pin that way. So now when I go to the pressing table, I know which way I'm pointing. Now, you can put the ball at the end you're sewing. I don't care. Just so you know your system. But
Did you use the ones that have the glass heads?
I did. These are actually the ones that come
Or are those
on our
the ones
little
that melt?
I don't know. Should I iron it and see what happens? No. No, just say no. Okay, let's go to the pressing here and let's watch these get pressed. Same thing again now. I'm on a bias edge. So like when I was pressing the half square triangles, this is a bias. You want to be careful. You don't want to over press it and cause it to have a stretch.
Head's gonna melt.
I know that head's going to melt. Well, now that I know, so now that I'm going that way, I'm just going to take it out because I'm going this way. I can remember that for surely from the time it takes me to iron it, I can remember that, right? One would hope. Okay, so there we go. And again, I'm not moving the iron around. I'm just holding it down nice and flat. I'm probably going to go back the other direction to make sure that it, you know, opens that seam. But see, look how pretty that little piece is. Isn't that fun?
That's nice.
It's a nice little piece. All
Well,
right.
I love the fabric.
I do too.
I think the designer did an amazing job with this collection.
She did. She did.
I mean, she really knows what she's doing.
The great part is, too, not only did she do a great job designing it, but she wrote the pattern. And I think...
Golly. I
You
mean,
know.
the fabric, I just can't get over with how the fabric plays. I mean,
Right.
it's like she had one of them 3 a.m. sessions where she just envisioned the whole thing.
Yeah. Well,
How the fabric should look, how the placement should be. It just blends so well.
and that's
it's
why...
so pretty.
Yeah, and that's why I like when
Man.
a quilter... When a quilter
Ugh.
designs the fabric and the pattern, you do get the whole package. Now, see how these fit
I
together?
mean, look at that fabric. I
Look
mean,
at
you
the fabric.
you can't see what I'm seeing on screen. But
Yeah, it
on
probably does look
screen,
better on screen. It always does.
Man, it just...
So now what you can see, my next
Spectacular.
part is I've got to get these points to match. Now, obviously, it's not my 1/4 inch in here, but the reason these have to be exactly in the right spot is these have to all match. So when I
Do they
put...
have to?
They have to.
Okay.
I mean...
I didn't know how hard and fast we're playing by the rules here.
Well, I know. I'm not pinning, so I'm breaking that rule right
Sometimes
there.
if I get in the neighborhood, I'm like, that's good enough.
Yeah,
As
really.
long as I can sew that block to another block.
Horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Horseshoes and hand grenades. But, you know, in a perfect world, we're going to want this to come together. So I'm going to fold that over, and then look what happens. There's my nesting thing again.
Do they nest?
They nest.
Oh, they nest. So
That's
it's
why-
not that much of a struggle.
It's really not because
Oh,
they
yay.
nest. And so when I sew down that seam, it's going to automatically do its little thing
It's gonna
and
catch
match.
'em.
It's going to catch them. All right. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine again, and here we go. Okay. Here we are back at the machine now, and I'm ready to sew my little, what I'm calling the wing blocks together. Now I'm back to my little conundrum. I don't have my foot. You know, I could change my foot. Now, because I'm just doing these one at a time, it seems like I'm changing the foot quite often, but you're going to do a whole series of them. But I could change back to my 1/4 inch foot. I'm just going to leave this one because I do have my straight and my 1/4 inch here. I can still do the same thing without having to change my foot. It's another reason why we really like this little seam tape. So I'm nesting everybody in. See, there's my little nest. This one's going that way. The one on the back's going this way. So I'm going to nest those two together. Make sure they stay nice and square. I'm going to put it up against my foot. Then I'm going to bring my next piece. I know I'm not pinning. The pinning gods are smiling and saying, look at how that's not going to work because she didn't pin. Guess what? I bet it does. All right, here we go. And like Peter said, you can just feel that when you sew across that piece, you can just feel them nest together. Truth is in the seam, right? We're going to see if it really worked. And stop and lock. And looky there, it did. Voila. There you have it. I got a point there. I got a point there. This is a 1/4 inch in like it's supposed to be. This point is matching here. I got my perfect square. So now I'm going to press that. And she tells us to press this seam open. Okay. And the reason is, see all this bulk right here? If I press that to the side, that's really chunky right there. Or even to this side, it's really chunky. So this is a seam that in this pattern, she's suggesting we press open. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Here we are now. I've just completed this block. You just saw me sew it together. I've pressed her open just as Nancy suggested in her directions, which I think is an excellent idea. And now I'm ready to make 16, or make 2, 4, 6. Yeah, I make 16 of these blocks completely, okay? And they're going to go, and as I make a quilt with it has, like, say, the same block, I'm just stacking my little pieces up here so that I'm ready for the next part. There you go. So I'm going to stack all those right there, stack all those there. The next piece we have to make is a square and a square, but I'm not excited about making this piece because I have a hard time getting these 1/4 inch come out just perfect. Her directions are excellent. They work very well, but I don't like to make this block. I'll just be honest with you. But you know, eat the frog first. Maybe when you start this block, if this is not your favorite, make these. You only have to make 4. It's not that big a deal. Do you hear me talking myself into it? I'm trying to talk myself into it. But this is made pretty much like the ones when you did the wing blocks here. It's the same process. I'm going to take and I'm going to draw a line diagonal across like that on 4 pieces. I think that's part of the reason I don't like these two is I feel like I'm losing that whole piece. So I get why you're keeping these little ends. But those are awful tiny. I'm not making blocks out of those. And I'm going to do this for 4 pieces to do the 4 corners. Now, when you're making this block, it's not an awful block. I should not be block shaming, should I? Peter's grinning at me because he knows I'm always the one in the shop saying, now don't shame, be nice, be kind, and yet I do this and I'm like,
one
oh,
of those shop samples I did, Cappy, the border was all block and a block borders. The whole border.
And
I was doing block and a block for days.
Oh, so you need to be teaching this because you'll know the tricks.
I don't know the tricks. I just made them and then got through it.
You
Somehow,
just got through
some
it.
way.
Sometimes
miracle.
you just survive. Okay, so when you sew these together, what I like to do is I'll do that corner and this corner. And
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's
gonna
what they
trim.
have you do.
Yeah, well, there you go.
See?
So I do
Simple.
opposites.
You're just doing a
Sew
half
it.
square triangle.
Right, and then
Kind of.
Press that, cut it, get it ready, and then I do the same with these. Now the trick is when you lay these over each other, you have a little overhang. So I'm going to sew this together real quick because you don't need to watch me sew this. You're going to know how to do that. But when I get to the part where I sew the other one on, I want you to see what the block looks like because this part over here looks a little wonky-do. So we will sew that together and then we'll be right back to show you what you got. So I've sewn these on. I laid them down just like this, and I've already pressed them so my line is gone, but I sewed just a stitch width over from the line, and I pressed them flat, and they look like they should, so I'm going to cut them off now. And that's why I wanted you to see this piece. That goes all the way over. And when I lay the other one on top, you're going to get what I'm saying here. But so now I have my new square. When I lay this piece on there, and you might have to get up a little close here, Peter. This piece is now overlapping that piece. And I want it to, because when I sew that together, it's going to give me my 1/4 inch from here to here and here to here that I need to have. If this piece is all the way up there, then I don't get my 1/4 inch. And you got to have that 1/4 inch to make it work. So I put these on here. And I sew those 4 on, again, opposites, and that makes my square to square. So you're going to make 4 of these. And when I make 4 of those, see, and Peter just said this block has gone on forever, and it does. There's a lot of little parts to this block. I would recommend, because this side you do it this way, and when you flip it around, you do it this way too. It's the same block. So I would sew 4 times 2. So you have 8 of these little pieces like this. You'll have 8 of these because you have 2 for each block. I would sew all of these together because that's the top and the bottom. It's the same block. And then in your center, you're going to have one on this side and one on this side like that. That's your center row. And then you just start sewing your pieces together in rows. 1, 2, 3. And that gives you this block. Now, when I sew my rows together, you have to follow the directions on which way to press. So when you look at the back, you're pressing this way on the wings, that way on the wings, okay? And you're pressing out on the sides of the block here. This is my final seam. So I sewed this row on, I sewed this row on, and this row on. All in succession. And then those are then pressed to the middle. And her directions show you that exactly. When you look right here at what she shows you, that's exactly what she shows you to do, is to sew it together that way. All right? And then you do it to where you have 4 of these blocks. And they go with last month's block. Let me show you last month's block. That hopefully you have done already. You have 4 of those. And when you look at the 2 blocks, you see why this one took so much longer than this one. There's a lot of little pieces in this. I mean, really and truly, look at that. But look, is this going to be a stunning quilt? I mean,
stunning. I mean, from the poster page, I thought it was stunning. So in person, I can't imagine. I'll have to buy it off you.
We do have 1 kit left. If you haven't bought yours yet,
no, buy the quilt. Buy the quilt off you.
Yeah, well, dream on, Betty. You know what they cost. So, yeah, this was last month. You made 4 of those. This one is a very complex block. The video's taken longer than what we like to take on a video when we do these, but I think in order to get all the little details that you needed to get it right, I wanted to be sure you had all that. If you ever have a question and we didn't answer it in this video, you're welcome to email me. It's Cappy at alwaysinstitches1.com, and it's like a baseball cap with an I on the end is my name, Cappy. I'm happy to answer your questions if you're working on this and you're kind of stuck on what to do. Hopefully the videos have helped. Those of you who have taken the class, I know you guys are still watching the video even though you're in the class because there's a lot to do. I mean, there's just a lot to learn with this particular block. Great techniques. And it was fun. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty proud that I did this. And I'm pretty proud that I have all my points where they're supposed to be. You know, The other thing is you want to square this up to 9.5-inch square. When you're done, the entire block is a 9.5-inch square block. Be sure you're squaring up your final block. I'm using best press as I go to press each piece and kind of get that nice and solid. So when I square up a block, I usually press a block, put a little best press or flatter on it, which is a starching material, press it really flat, and then I cut it for the final square up. I don't do the final square up until I've put the starch in it. But there you go. First 2 months are done. We've just got a few more to go, and if you're still not into it, we do have a kit we can put together for you. So I think we've covered it all. I still got to go home and make 3 blocks.
Oh.
But that's okay. That's what's fun. That's why we do what we do. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, any questions, give us a call. Lots to do, and I hope you're having a happy stitching day. We are at Always in Stitches. Bye-bye.